Increasing student engagement is more difficult than ever because our students are more distracted than ever. Give me 5 minutes and I'll share some ideas about how you can increase student engagement by dropping the do now. The average TikToking teen spends roughly 90 minutes on the app each day. Want to know the average watch time for a TikTok? 1.5 seconds, which is that. The TikTok analytics team has identified what they call the 3-second rule. It basically says that your content could be great, but if you haven't engaged the viewer in the first 3 seconds, it's basically over. And when a video fails to reach the 3-second threshold, the algorithm reduces the likelihood of that content reaching someone else's For You page. On the other hand, the average class lesson features a do now activity that lasts 3 minutes. What exactly have you planned that can overcome the 3-second rule, not once, but 60 times? Or are we tacitly suggesting to our students, this lesson may not be for you? It's easy to blame short attention spans. Here are 2 reasons not to. 1. Children, like adults, have been expertly drawn into technological addiction by some of the most powerful and influential companies in the world, and that has caused a major shift in how they consume information. Not their fault, it's the adults. 2. Kids spend countless hours each day on social media and gaming. They're wired to engage now more than ever for really long, even unhealthy periods of time. But what they won't do is sit around and wait for you to make it interesting. For those educators unwilling to change their ways, this is really depressing. But for those flexible and innovative teachers willing to meet students where they are, this is exactly where the window of opportunity is. To make room for new ideas, we have to say goodbye to conventions that have lost their effectiveness. Yes, do now. I'm talking about you. Shakespeare once wrote, "Parting is such sweet sorrow." But in this case, it's actually more like good riddance. The original intention behind the do now was to assign a task that generated immediate compliance to aid in classroom management. This gave a teacher 3 to 5 minutes to handle administrative tasks like collecting homework, distributing papers, taking attendance, etc. Most of that is handled digitally now. And as for students, if you really want to manage behaviors, try engaging them from the jump, which touches upon one of the other myths of the do now. There's this really outdated premise that a learner needs to warm up before they engage in learning. Where are the TikTok warm-ups? Instagram? Snap? When you YouTube how to fix your washing machine, do you first watch videos on the history of washing machines or the importance of fixing things before you activate your prior knowledge? Brains aren't wired that way anymore. Of course, a teacher still may need to recall prior knowledge to help students build new understandings. But that does not have to happen in the opening minutes. It is far more important to spark an interest than review previous lessons. There will be time for that. This leads to the most offensive part of the do now, in my opinion. It's usually boring. Why? It's typically rote practice. Solve these problems, define these terms, write 3 things you remember about the Roman Empire. And for these menial tasks, students get a whopping 3, 4, or 5 minutes. You sure you want to give 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 16-year-olds 4 minutes of idle time? The opening is when they are making a critical assessment as to whether or not they want to invest in what you are selling. The opening has to be absolute fire, not fizzle. Don't be fooled by the students who are sitting quietly. That is not engagement, it's compliance. Real learning is usually noisy. A great motivation is a call to action. But students are often hindered because, for many, there are barriers, not the least of which is a lack of intrinsic desire to learn about the subject you teach. So how do you get around that not so tiny obstacle? Take, for example, a math lesson in which students learn to find the percent of a number. Instead of beginning the lesson with content such as solving a handful of equations like multiplying whole numbers and decimals, begin with a parallel concept. Try this. At the bell, ask if they can help you settle a dispute. I went to this great restaurant yesterday, and at the end of the meal, I got into an argument with my daughter. I wanted to leave a $10 tip, and she said to leave more. Isn't $10 a good tip? I'm sure at some point in this lesson, a math teacher would draw a parallel to leaving a tip at a restaurant, but why wait until students struggle or grow frustrated before breaking down this mathematical idea into ways that they can more easily grasp? And notice that I'm not simply asking them to find the percent right away. Instead, I'm hiding the peas in the mashed potatoes by asking them to weigh in on a dilemma. Dilemmas have conflict, and conflict is the root of drama. And who doesn't love drama? At first, students may immediately chime in based on their opinion of whether $10 is a good tip, but give it a minute. Soon, someone in the room will realize that they do not have enough information to really answer the question, but don't immediately provide it. Keep the tension going by asking a thought-provoking question like, why does it matter? Instead of congratulating that student, I am now challenging all the students to think harder. There is no longer concern of getting tripped up on the math because this is a discussion about a restaurant. It is about logic and relatability. By attacking this conceptually, you have introduced them to the exact kind of mathematical thinking necessary to solve these kinds of problems, and lucky for the math teacher, the only way to truly resolve the conflict is to learn how to do the math. This is just one tiny example of how leading with concepts helps circumvent some commonplace barriers to learning. The imaginary walls that stand between your students and the content you wish to teach can be eviscerated when you wield a sledgehammer in the form of a great motivation. Be sure to check out my next video where I'll break down how to level up your motivation game even further. Remember, great teaching is not easy. Motivating students is not easy. Keeping students engaged in a world of digital distractions is not easy. But if you're passionate about what you do, then all of this hard work is a labor of love. Be sure to subscribe, comment, and share with educators who are passionate about making a difference in the lives of kids.